The prophecy so powerful, it was banned from the Bible. For centuries, the Bible has been seen as a complete, unchanging text. But what if that's not the whole story? What if there are books written by prophets that didn't make the final cut in everyone's Bible? There is such a book. It's written from the perspective of the personal scribe of the prophet Jeremiah, right from the heart of the Babylonian exile. It contains a message so powerful that it's been at the center of a centuries-long debate. Its name is the Book of Baruch. The question is, what did its pages reveal that led to it being left out of so many versions of the Bible? Today, we uncover the fascinating story of the prophecy that some thought was better left hidden. Section 1. The Scene of the Crime. A book on the edge. When you pick up a Bible today, you might think you're holding all the sacred texts that ever existed. But the reality is way more complicated. The Bible as we know it is the product of centuries of debate, translation, and intense theological struggle. Countless texts were considered, but many were ultimately left out of some traditions, becoming what we now call the Apocrypha, or hidden books. Among these is the Book of Baruch. Now, unlike some obscure texts with questionable origins, this book has a serious pedigree. It's attributed to Baruch ben Neriah, the historical scribe and close friend of the major prophet Jeremiah. This was a man who stood next to one of history's most important figures during a time of unimaginable crisis. Yet, despite this, the Book of Baruch is missing from most Protestant Bibles today. It wasn't simply lost to time. Its place in the Bible was a casualty of a long and heated argument over which ancient texts should be considered scripture. To understand why it was so controversial, we have to go back to the devastating event that inspired it: the Babylonian exile. Section 2. The historical context. A prophet in exile. The year is 587 BCE. The kingdom of Judah has been crushed. The unthinkable has happened. Jerusalem, the holy city, has been conquered by the Babylonian Empire under King Nebuchadnezzar. The sacred Temple of Solomon, believed to be the dwelling place of God on earth, has been burned to the ground. The nation's elite, the king, priests, and scholars, have been forced into a brutal march across the desert to the pagan city of Babylon. This wasn't just a military defeat, it was a spiritual apocalypse. Imagine the despair. Their entire worldview was shattered. They believed they were God's chosen people, protected by an unbreakable promise. Yet here they were, enslaved in a foreign land, surrounded by towering temples to other gods. They had to ask the hardest question imaginable. Had their God abandoned them? Or worse, had he been defeated? It's in this fire of suffering and doubt that the Book of Baruch is set. While it's attributed to Baruch writing during the exile, most scholars believe it was likely composed centuries later, looking back on this traumatic event. The book's narrative places Baruch in Babylon, reading these words aloud to the exiled Jewish community and their captured king. It's a story delivering a divine message meant to make sense of the senseless and offer a way out of the darkness. Section 3. The Investigation. Unveiling the explosive contents. So what did the Book of Baruch actually say? Its power doesn't come from a single shocking revelation, but from a series of profound messages that, together, formed a radical guide for survival. Not with swords, but with faith. The book can be broken down into a few key parts, each one pretty provocative. First, there's a national confession of sin. This wasn't some quiet, personal prayer. It was a public and humbling admission of guilt. Baruch calls on the entire nation to confess that their exile wasn't a random tragedy. It was a direct punishment from God for their own disobedience and idolatry. In an age where leaders never admitted fault, this was a radical idea. It put the responsibility for the catastrophe squarely on their own shoulders. Second, the book shifts to a beautiful poem on wisdom. Baruch asks a simple question: where can wisdom be found? He dismisses the idea that it's with powerful kings or wealthy merchants. Instead, he makes a bold declaration. True divine wisdom is found in the law of God, the Torah. This was a powerful statement of spiritual independence. While surrounded by the impressive knowledge of Babylon, Baruch told his people they already had something far greater. Third comes the prophecy of hope and restoration. After the confession and the call to wisdom, Baruch unleashes a torrent of prophetic poetry. He personifies Jerusalem as a grieving widow, weeping for her lost children. But then, she is told to stop mourning and look around, because God Himself will gather her scattered children and bring them home. For an exiled and enslaved people, this vision of divine restoration was a politically charged promise. It prophesied a future where Babylon's power would be broken and Jerusalem would rise again. Finally, the book often includes what's known as the Letter of Jeremiah, sometimes as its last chapter, though it was likely a separate text originally. This section is a scathing, relentless, and mocking attack on idolatry. It dismantles the entire Babylonian religious system piece by piece. The letter describes their magnificent idols, covered in gold and silver, and calls them completely powerless. They're compared to scarecrows in a cucumber patch. The author points out that these gods can't speak, see, or even save themselves from rust or termites. In a society where the emperor's power was tied to the state gods, this wasn't just theological debate. It was spiritual resistance. Section 4. The Revelation. Why was it left out? So we come back to the main question. Why was a book with such a powerful message left out of so many Bibles? The real story isn't a secret plot, but a long history of scholarly and theological debate. The primary reason goes back to how the biblical canon, the official list of books, was formed. The Book of Baruch was included in the Septuagint, a Greek translation of the Hebrew Scriptures that was widely used by early Christians. Many early church fathers quoted it and considered it scripture. However, there was always a debate. Some scholars, like St. Jerome, who translated the Latin Vulgate, were hesitant about any books that weren't in the original Hebrew Bible used by Jews in Palestine. This debate reached a boiling point during the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century. Protestant leaders, wanting to return to what they saw as the original sources, decided to stick to the shorter Hebrew canon. The Book of Baruch, along with several others, was moved to a separate section called the Apocrypha and eventually dropped from most Protestant Bibles. In response, the Catholic Church, at the Council of Trent in 1546, officially reaffirmed its long-held belief that the Book of Baruch was scripture, solidifying its place in the Catholic Bible where it remains today. So, its banning wasn't a conspiracy to hide a dangerous prophecy, but the result of a historic disagreement over which ancient texts belonged in the Bible. Still, with its fierce critique of empire and idolatry, you can see why the book might have made rulers in later empires, like Rome, a little nervous. The story of the Book of Baruch is a powerful reminder that the Bible has a dynamic and fascinating history. Its prophecies gave strength to a people in their darkest hour, but its debated status made it a flashpoint in the ongoing story of faith. If you're fascinated by these hidden histories, and the stories behind the scriptures, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. We dive into these incredible mysteries every week. Conclusion. The journey of the Book of Baruch, from a scroll inspiring exiles to a controversial text at the heart of the Reformation, shows just how powerful words can be. It was a book of hope for the hopeless and a guide for the lost. But its disputed origins and its challenging message placed it on the front lines of a debate that lasted for centuries. Its story makes you wonder how many other powerful stories are out there, waiting in the debated and disputed texts of history.